This is a video explanation of the GE McKinsey model of market attractiveness. What this model is, it's called a multi-factor assessment tool or multi-factor assessment model. It looks at a range of factors to assess the success or the position of a product or business in any particular market. This is what turns out at the end of the calculation is you plot somewhere that you will actually sit, or you plot where your business sits on this model, and then from there it actually gives you some recommendations as to some basic strategies you should actually use. So to calculate McKinsey, or calculate GE, we begin with market attractiveness. Market attractiveness is a list of the aspects or the attributes that you require in your market for you to consider it to be attractive. Now, every single business is going to come up with its own list of things that make it attractive. So for example, you might come up with some things that you say, right, for us to go into a particular marketplace, this is what we need. We might say, we want market growth. So we want to go into any market where there is some level of market growth. We might say we also want a market where there's a low number of competition, so not many competitors. We might also want a market where we have access to distribution channels. So we're not going to go into a market if we can't actually get our product distributed around that market. So we want access to a particular marketplace. You might also say we want a market where there's a potential to make us a large amount of profit. So every business is going to come up with its own list, and it's important not to just use the list which I've come up with here, but to go back to the organisation and say, for us to assess a particular marketplace, what's important? You know, what are we actually looking for? And now, not everything is equally important. Some things are more important than others. Now, I've only listed 4 here, and you should usually have quite a lot more than 4. We're probably looking 8 to 10 different factors. You get the organisation to add some weighting to them. So they might say, well, yes, market growth is very important, but really it's not that important. Let's say high profit is the most important thing we're looking for. Now, according to this model, you have 100 points to spend. So you have to work out, well, out of 100, let's say high profit is worth 50 out of that 100. We might say access to distribution channels is also fairly important. We're going to give that 30 out of 100. We might say, look, we want some market growth. That's going to be fairly important. And probably the least important thing, you know, a good organisation, we could say, well, it doesn't really matter if we've got lots of competitors. The main thing is that it adds up to 100. And I'm doing this in Excel at the moment. That's why we've got our straight calculation down here of 100 points. Just get rid of that 50 there. Then you have to rate particular marketplaces. And so if we were talking about potentially exporting our product to a particular country, we could look at countries along here, along this these categories, about which country we could possibly export our product to. We'll just put them as Market 1, Market 2. We'll just stick with 2 markets at the moment. So you're looking at 2 options. We could sell our product into Market 1, or we could sell our product into Market 2. What you need to really do is get the organisation to agree on this weighting. So they agree on the list of things they see as important. They then also agree on the weighting as to the relative importance of each of these areas. Because now it starts to get to the tricky bit. We have to actually analyse the market against the criteria that we've listed over here. We forget about the weighting. We give ourselves a score, and look, the best way to think about this is scoring yourself out of 10. But if you get 10 out of 10, instead of writing 10, you'd write 1. If you get 5 out of 10, you write 0.5, and various options. So let's say we look at market 1 and we say, wow, there's a fair bit of growth. That's a fairly high growth market. We give ourselves 1. What I've got here in this next cell is a calculation. It's multiplying the 15 times the 1 to come up with that score of 15. Then we might say, okay, we're going to look at the competition, and let's say there's not much competition. We're going to give that market 1 out of 10. So, sorry, in this example, there is lots of competition, so it doesn't actually get a very high score. We give it 1. Let's say in this market we have fairly okay access to distribution channels. So we give ourselves 0.5. But in this market, let's say they don't have a lot of money, it gets a 2 out of 10 for their score in profit. So what it's done in this calculation through here is multiplied them out, and at the bottom we have where it sums them. So it adds up everything in this column through here, coming up with that particular result. Then we look at a second market. Let's say we look at this other market. So, well, it's actually not a high amount of growth there. It's maybe a little bit, but not too much. We look at the number of competitors. We say, wow, there's not many competitors in that marketplace. But we look at the distribution channels, and let's say we have fairly good access to them, but not super. We might also look at the market and say, in this marketplace, there's a fair amount of potential for making some money. So again, we've multiplied them out. In this column here, we're looking at 0.4 multiplied by the 15, coming up with a score of 6, and so on down the column. Add them all up and come up with a score of 78. So in those two markets, we've got one that has a market attractiveness score of 40 and another market that has a market attractiveness score of 78. So you can see fairly quickly that market 2 is far more attractive than market 1. And by this being what we call this multi-factor assessment tool, it's looked at the range of factors and it's weighted them all based on their relative importance and come up with a score. So that's the first part, is to work out how attractive a particular marketplace is, which is why we use the term market attractiveness. The next thing is to look at business position, and so we'll only use one of these at the moment, so I'm just going to ignore all of this other stuff through there. I'm just going to delete that now to save it being too complicated. And we're going to look at coming up with a bunch of factors which are critical for success in that industry. Just quickly making some changes here as well. So let's say, well, I'm not really sure of any particular industry, doesn't really matter, but you might say having a good quality product is important. You might have having some financial capital is going to be fairly important. Let's say, just going to put in having some cash is important. We might also have customer service. Have customer service as one of those things that's important. We could also have a good reputation. So again, we'll just stick with this list of 4, but again, in any particular marketplace, you're going to have a lot more than just 4 things that increase the chance of success. Same as we did before, we need to weight these. So every single thing can't be as equally important. Let's say having a good quality product in this particular industry is fairly important. So we give ourselves 60 out of 100, or we give that factor 60 out of 100. So we're not looking at seeing how good we are at the moment, we're just rating each of these factors. So then we say, well, how important is it that the company has lots of money? And potentially it's not very important. Customer service could be seen as something that's fairly significant, followed by having a good reputation. And again, you take this weighting list back to the organisation, and somewhat it's actually best to almost base this on a bit of market research. This is probably some good conversations to have in things like a focus group. We ask the customer about what they're interested in, and then get them to actually weight each of these factors. The next thing is to look at our organisation and rate ourselves. Just how good a quality product do we actually have? And again, this is best to get done in a focus group where it's your customers rating you and not yourself, because usually we're going to probably be a little bit more positively biased. So let's say our customers think we have a fairly good quality product, but you know, they actually don't think we have a lot of money. Let's say our customer service is really bad as well, but we have a fantastic reputation. What we've done as before, we've calculated by the 60 multiplied by the 0.8, which we have all these scores through here. So we'll come up with a score of 60. One of the things this instantly does is it starts to show some areas that we can improve. If we have a fairly low score, as we do in this example here, a low score of customer service, if we improve our customer service, instantly we're going to get a better result when we start multiplying it out. What you can actually do is, if we could put in other columns again, like I had a minute ago, we could look at our competitors' products and get our customers to rate each of their products against the criteria that I've listed. And so we can come up with some competitors' scores to sort of calculate, to work out where we sit against each of those. So that's really how we measure our business position. Now what you do with these two, we come over to good old McKinsey, and this is how the model ends up looking. We have our two axes, one of them, market attractiveness, along this left-hand side here, business position going along the base. And so I've just grabbed my scores from the other screen. On market 1, we have a market attractiveness score of 0.45 and market attractiveness on the second market of 78. I'm just going to quickly throw in a couple of shapes. So we use our market attractiveness and we follow our circle up here. On our first market, it's 40.5. So let's say we go to about there, just under the 50 score. On our second market, we'll go up to about 78. So that would be perhaps about there. That's when we then look at our business position. And our business position, instead of starting at 0 over in this bottom left corner, it starts over here in the bottom right and heads over this direction here. So if we go into market, we'll first off work with this market 1. On this axis, we stay along the vertical, but we move along till we hit to about 60, which starting this side, 50 is the midpoint there, so let's say it's about there. In this market 3 here, it's going to be directly above it, but it lands there because it's in a completely different market. And so you can see fairly quickly, just by looking at these two different marketplaces, one of the set of circles appears along this sort of diagonal line through here, where it's selective investment. So if we were to go into market 1, we would use a selective investment strategy. We wouldn't potentially go in, no holds barred. We'd probably be a little bit cautious entering in that market. However, if we were to go into market 2, we can see based on our business position in that attractive market, we've got an investment for growth general strategy. It's saying up here that we would need to build our strength. And we find the areas that we're actually quite good at doing. We'd work out ways to improve our business position. And so if we improve our business position, that means through time we could end up over here in this quadrant here, which would be growing our business and really strengthening the position we are in the marketplace. So that's a fairly short and simple version of how to construct the GE McKinsey's model of market attractiveness and business position. From there we can actually start to build some basic strategies. But it's a fairly useful model. You can look at gathering some market information based on some market research. You can look at gathering some information about marketplaces and use these to come up with some fairly good strategies that aren't based on gut feeling. They're all based on some good solid data, which allows you to make some fairly solid business decisions. So hopefully that's fairly helpful in you working out how to use McKinsey, at least as the first step to how to actually calculate McKinsey anyway.